Hello and welcome to Hamer Reviews. My name is Christopher Hamer and today I'm reviewing the Canon RF 7200 2.8 IS USM lens for the R series cameras. This lens is really interesting. It has taken such a different design language to my Nikon 7200 2.8S. I just had to bring it out to show you. I'm going to be doing a bit more of a comparison potentially between these two lenses in another video, but you can just immediately see the difference. Whereas the Nikon does not extend as it zooms, the Canon does. Now in the past, I've always seen that as a negative. It means that you're going to suck dust into the lens, but actually I don't think it does. The same amount of elements are moving inside this 7200. Well, not exactly the same, but pretty much, as they do in the Canon one. But the Canon one will fit vertically in my bags, my camera bags, which is amazing. It's a bit of a game changer, to be honest. It extends a fair bit, but not too much. Fully extended, it's still actually fractionally shorter than my Nikon lens. And I think it fulfills the design aims that Canon's engineers set out when they went about developing the RF series lenses. So specifically, they said they wanted to make lenses that were better than the EF versions, that were lighter or smaller where possible, and that were optically better. And I think this does all of those. Now, we might not be used to extending pro zooms, but as I said, being able to fit this in a bag means you have more space for other lenses, or indeed, you can have a smaller bag, which is always useful. It does have image stabilization built in, which is great. It has 3 modes for that, which is pretty cool. It has 5 stops of image stabilization, actually, which is really good. At the back of this lens, you have a control ring, which you can set in your R series camera to do various things. For instance, change ISO or exposure compensation. You have various choices there. You have a very nice, very smooth manual focus ring, though it is worth noting it's fly-by-wire, so it's not connected and is only activated when you change the settings on the lens or in camera, and otherwise it will do nothing. And actually extending this lens out is very easy, even when you're shooting upwards, which I think is sort of the telltale for when a lens is badly designed. It holds where its position, but more importantly, it doesn't take a lot of force to do it, so it's very well geared. Optically, there is nothing I can say bad about this lens. It is a great 70-200 2.8 Pro level lens. It, simply put, does its job exactly as you would want it to. It's sharp across the board, whether it's at 2.8 or whether it's at F8, it is just very, very sharp. It's sharp at 70mm and it's sharp at 200mm. I did not note a huge amount of distortion, which is good. And even though it's, a chunky piece of glass, it's still quite light. So in the bag, it's not going to weigh you down too much. It's certainly lighter than my Nikon lens, certainly lighter than that. So I realized we were a different day, different t-shirt, etc. But I was just going to put up some photos talking about this lens foot on the 7200, but actually I thought I'd add a bit of video because otherwise this might not make sense. So when I was talking about this, obviously you can have the lens foot mounted straight down as you usually would. There's no issue with this, but because of the way this lens is designed, I actually found I wasn't necessarily getting enough purchase on the front zoom ring, so I preferred moving it out of the way. Now, the next step would be, well, you move it to the left, but again, because of where the zoom ring is, I was finding my hand was jamming against it, so that's no good either. The other option is you put it straight up. Now, straight up is fine, but I actually find it gets in the way, and I find it annoying when I'm shooting. Sorry, it almost sounds like I'm finding a reason for disliking this. But it's one of my main flaws that I wanted to point out. So it's a bit of a bugbear, gets in the way, I don't like that either. So the best I could do, and this is what I do with my Nikon, is move it out to the right. And in theory to the right, it would be out of the way, it's in front of the grip, it's absolutely fine, right? But it's not, because now if I put my hands in here, I've actually got my fingers jammed up against the lens foot. So if you're trying to use this lens to take photographs out and about, and you want to move the lens foot out the way, I find there is no comfortable position for it. Obviously, if you don't mind it, see my point? If you don't mind it being all the way up, this is probably your best solution to get it out the way. that's great. If this is okay for you, you're going to be fine. If, like me though, you don't like it in this position, you don't like it out to the left, you don't like it out to the bottom, then right's going to be your only choice, and it's going to get in the way, and it's going to be painful, and it's going to be annoying. So that's what I was trying to talk about. This lens foot gets in the way, and it's very frustrating. It is the only thing I really don't like about this lens. I love the rest of the design. It's just this lens foot that's an issue. The one thing I will say for it, and I think I said this in the main video, is it's very easy to remove the foot. You simply undo the pin, pull it out, and it will come off without you having to remove the lens, which I really like. That's not something I've seen on any Nikon lenses before, for instance. So it is easy to remove it. However, remove it you must if you want to shoot without it getting in the way, in my personal opinion. Like this is a nice combination, and that is how I have been using it, and why I didn't have it on the lens when I was reviewing it, because I completely forgot it even existed. Obviously, if you do want it mounted, it's going to be fairly easy to put it back on, but just bear in mind that it is a bit of a pain. One last thing I will mention is that even if you don't want it mounted on your camera the whole time, because this lens is surprisingly not that front heavy, I reckon you could get away with using the camera mount for a tripod rather than the lens foot in most situations. Not something I'd usually say is possible or you should do with a 70-200, but on this particular one, with the way it's designed, I think you can get away with it without too much wobble. So perhaps that is your solution. So there you go. That's just my little bit on this lens foot. I'm sorry I don't like it. I do like this lens. Lens foot's not for me. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you find that little extra bit useful. Now back to the video. The minimum focus distance on it is good. It's about 0.7 meters, which I think is slightly closer than my Nikon lens, and it does well. I mean, that's 2.3 feet for those of you that don't want metric. One thing I concerns me, and this might just be me, the image stabilization seems to be very far forward. It's about halfway, sort of where the end of the lens is when it isn't extended. And the issue there is that it doesn't seem to lock in place. It rattles a lot when when you don't have it mounted on the camera. So I kind of worry if you're, say, in a safari and you have this in your bag and you're in a Land Rover and it's rattling a lot as you go down the road, I kind of worry it's going to damage the lens. And I was really worried I'd done something wrong. So I switched off the camera and then disconnected it and put the lens caps on, and actually that just seems the way it is. Even if you turn the image stabilization off, it doesn't lock itself in place afterwards. So something to be aware of. I don't know if you'll see issues down the line. You probably won't. It might just be the way Canon does things, because I haven't used a huge amount of EF glass in the past. But it's kind of one of those things that's weird. The Nikon lens locks itself when you disconnect it from the camera. So just something to be aware of there. It does come with a lens hood as well. It's quite a deep lens hood, quite a wide one, which there's nothing wrong with. It does have a both nice and frustrating feature at the same time. You have this little window which allows you, for instance, to move a circular polarizer around when you're using the lens with the lens hood. Now, that's cool. It's nice to see that Canon has thought about people using filters. Nikon certainly hasn't. But I found this flipped open far too easily, and more often than not, that little door was open and not closed, which could, under a very finite, very small amount admittedly, but potentially possible situation, let light in. I personally, if I had this lens and I didn't use circular polarizers or lenses or filters that I needed to move around, would glue that shut. As this is not my lens, I would not do that. But something to be aware of and something to think about. You obviously also have the focus limiter. I didn't mention that, alongside switches on the side to change autofocus manual, plus the IS on-off and IS stabilization modes. But that's it in terms of controls. So this is an expensive lens, and it must be said, this costs £2,700, whereas the Nikon costs $2,300. Perhaps it's due to design or the way that that Canon has spent time designing this new extending version. Yeah, but just bear in mind it's not cheap. I do think it's still good value if you are an RF user, because it is one of the holy trinity of lenses, and it certainly does deliver in sharpness and in quality. They're just making you pay for it. Overall then, this is a great lens, and despite the fact that It's not perfect in my view, it is pretty damn close, and I would recommend it to anyone using a Canon EOS R camera. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you found this interesting. If you have any thoughts on the lens, or indeed some questions, pop them in the comments section below. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, and please do subscribe, as it really does help me out. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I see you again next time. Goodbye.